Hi, welcome to Mark's English Academy, the place to learn English fast. I want to ask you a question. If you were driving down the road and you saw this sign, would you obey it? What if nobody else was obeying it? Would you still obey it? Or what if you knew that the police wouldn't punish you for disobeying it? Would you still obey it? Well, I live in China and nobody obeys this sign. So is it important for you to obey it? It's a little bit like English grammar. In English, we have lots of different rules, but lots of people don't obey the rules. So, are the rules important? In this series, I'm going to teach you grammar that's useful for you. The purpose of English grammar is to help you learn English. So don't be afraid of it. It's a very useful tool to help you understand how English works. Okay, so the English language is made up of different parts that we call parts of speech. So here are the different parts of speech. We have articles, nouns, verbs, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. Now, the first few videos in this series are going to be about the parts of speech. My plan is to make one video for each part of speech. Okay? This is really important because if you don't understand the parts of speech, the rest of grammar is going to be confusing. So that's why I want to start with the parts of speech. So I'll make 9 videos and then I'll teach you other topics in grammar. But first, these. So some of these are easier than others. For example, adjectives. Adjectives are quite easy. I think most students understand adjectives. Adjectives are words like big, fun, tall, brown. Okay, but verbs, on the other hand, are a nightmare. The reason verbs are a nightmare is because verbs can change forms. For example, the verb go. It can be go, going, went, gone. And all of that is really confusing. Also, verbs show time. Future, past, present. And I'm going to make a whole series on verb tenses that I think you will find very helpful. So check that out. But first, I'm going to make videos on these parts of speech. Okay, so when we speak English, we speak in sentences. And a sentence is made up of different parts. And every word in the English language plays a role. Okay, so any word you can think of in English is always one of these roles. So a sentence needs at least 2 parts. It needs a verb and a noun or a pronoun. Okay, so some sentences might only have 2 words. For example, I run. I run. That's a good sentence. Other sentences have more words, like I run fast, or I run to the park every day. Okay, so every sentence has some of these different roles. Sometimes a sentence can have all of them in one sentence. For example, look at this sentence. Seriously, I love Mark because he makes even the hardest grammar slide easily into my brain. I hope that's true. But here I have all the different parts of speech. Interjection, pronoun, verb, noun, conjunction, pronoun, verb, adverb, article, adjective, noun, verb, adverb, preposition, pronoun, noun. I'm sure you knew that even before I told you. But anyway, those are the parts of speech. Next, I want to talk to you about your grammar books. But first, it's sponsor time. This lesson is brought to you by nobody. Instead of watching me eat Chinese food at a Chinese cafeteria, you could be watching me promote your product or service. One thing I forgot to mention before the break is that when you see a word in a sentence, that word can only play one role at a time. Maybe a noun or a verb or an adjective, but only one role. But in English, there are lots of words that can play several different roles depending on the situation. For example, the word love. Love could be a noun or a verb. If I say, love is beautiful, then it would be a noun. But if I say, I love you, then it would be a verb. Okay, this can be a little bit confusing because when you learn vocabulary, you remember which part of speech a word is. For example, you learn the word house and you remember it's a noun, or run is a verb, or big is an adjective. So it can be tricky when you see these words playing a different role. Then it throws you off and you don't know what to do. For example, the word house. You think house is a noun, but in fact, the word house can also be a verb, to house. For example, I could say, the trunk of my car is housing a family of mice. The trunk of my car is housing a family of mice. That means the mice live in the trunk of my car. Okay, so these words can be a little bit tricky, but don't worry about it. Just try to remember that a word can play different roles. Okay, next I want to talk about your grammar textbooks. When you open your English grammar textbooks, do you see words like this? When you see words like this, do you get scared? I hope so, because I get scared when I see words like this. The reason I get scared is because I don't use words like this in real life. In fact, nobody I know uses words like this in real life. I bet if you would ask 100 native English speakers what any of these words mean, nobody would be able to tell you. Zero. And also, if you ask 100 English teachers what any of these words mean, I think maybe 2 or 3, or maybe none. I don't know. So that's the problem, because you see words like this and you get intimidated because they're big words and you don't understand them. But that's okay. When you see words like this, just relax and try to understand the concept. Look at the examples and try to understand what it's trying to teach you. After you've learned the concept, then just forget the words. Forget the words because you don't need them. So if you were learning about auxiliary verbs or the subjunctive mood, after you learn the concept, then you can forget the word auxiliary or forget the word subjunctive, because you'll never ever use that again in your life. Okay. Another thing I wanted to mention is that English grammar can seem quite intimidating when you realize how much English grammar you have to learn. When you look through your grammar book and you realize, wow, there's so much English grammar. You know, don't worry about it because nobody understands English completely. Even experts, there are people who study English and try to understand the language, but even they don't understand English fully. So if you don't understand English fully, it's okay. I don't understand English fully, all right? Another thing I want to mention is that standard English doesn't exist. Maybe it exists in theory, but in real life, standard English doesn't exist. It's a little bit like international law. In theory, international law exists, but in reality, it doesn't work. It doesn't exist. Okay, so just remember that English is a wild animal. People speak English all around the world, and sometimes they disagree on grammar or spelling or pronunciation or punctuation, all those things. So it doesn't really matter. If you're studying British English, that's okay. If you're studying American English, that's okay. Just remember, you might encounter some problems down the road, but it's not anything to worry about. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is that English evolves. I want you to remember that English evolves. Every language evolves. If you went back in time 100 or 200 years, the English that they spoke back then is very different from the English they speak today. New words come into the language and old words leave. That's how languages evolve. For example, the word whom, W-H-O-M. I never use that word. And I don't know anybody who ever uses that word, but it's probably in your grammar textbook. So don't worry about it. I don't think you have to learn that word, because if native English speakers aren't using a word, then it will disappear from the language forever. Okay, so anyway, I hope that gives you a little bit of confidence when you're studying English. Know that I don't understand everything, experts don't understand everything, so it doesn't matter if you don't understand everything. just relax, take some deep breaths, and keep going. Okay, so that's all I have to say. I look forward to being your teacher in this series, and I'll see you over in the next lesson. Take care.